But the odd thing is, I stayed in it.
Yeah.
Most of my siblings left at one point or another. But I stayed in it. And so I think that's what's unique is it's taken me a long time to figure out why. Why did I stay when I hated it so much? And I raised my kids in it. If you aren't in every single meeting that you could be in, and then the judgment starts coming, people start asking. Times when the whole meeting would be invited to something except for me. I wasn't invited. Or all the kids would be invited except for my kids. If I don't believe their teachings, and now I see that there's abuse on top of it, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Why am I here? You know, so these are people dictating my life, but yet they are living a life that is horrendous. If somebody came to a meeting that didn't profess and they took part, everybody, like the air went out of the room. You can no longer cherry pick verses to fit your narrative.
Not when you're trying to study, it doesn't work.
The biggest thing was I've been lied to my whole life, and that's what made me angry. Now when I look back, it's just crazy. No wonder a lot of us have anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
Told by a worker that I would never go to heaven if I didn't reconcile with my husband, my ex-husband. Well, it's kind of hard to do when he's married. My anxiety and depression is gone.
Yeah.
Because I'm no longer trying to live something that I feel like is wrong.
Yeah.
And I didn't just feel like it didn't fit well.
Yeah.
I felt like it was not godly.
So, knowing that there's a lot of people out there that are in the same position that you were just in, like mentally have left but physically haven't, what advice would you give them?
Hey guys, so today we met with Sarah's sister Lisa. So the interview probably that got posted before this one was with Sarah. This is with her sister. So we came to the park and met with them just to visit, and she said she'd share a little bit of her story, which I think will be interesting to compare the siblings' stories, things that were similar and even different. But instead of me doing the interview, I'm going to have my wife Merissa do it with her. And so I'm going to set up the camera and they will visit for a little bit, and she'll share a little bit of her story.
I guess the reason why I'm telling my story is because I used to think it was unique, but I think a lot of people are in my situation. Mm-hmm. But I grew up, I was born and raised and grew up. Started going to meeting probably when I was a couple weeks old. And I hated every minute of it. And I felt like it was restrictive and I wasn't able to be myself. I was a tomboy and that wasn't allowed, and I had to wear dresses, and going to meeting and even as a child made me anxious, and I felt agitated, and I just hated it.
I'm curious, just because I've just heard the same from somebody else, do you feel like it was more restrictive because you're a woman than it was for
Definitely.
men? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Definitely.
not in, I feel like that was in clothes, but I felt other things too, like you were supposed to be a certain way as a woman and the men could just kind of.
Yeah, I was such a tomboy and I loved like fishing and hunting, and as I got older, I was allowed to do more of those things, but it wasn't a boy thing.
Yeah.
You know, and the women would sit and talk, and I wanted to be out with the boys.
Yeah.
So I think it definitely was. Talking to my brothers, they felt restricted too.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things they felt restricted, but we weren't allowed to like listen to music, and of course we didn't have a TV.
Yeah.
Couldn't wear anything that the workers wouldn't wear, even the boys. So you can imagine what it was like to go to junior high and high school looking like that.
No, that'd be awful.
Yeah, no sports, and so you didn't really belong to anything.
Yeah.
Couldn't have any friends that weren't part of the 2x2s. Rarely had friends over, even people who belonged. But that might have just been parenting. Yeah, so I just always hated it. But the odd thing is, I stayed in it.
Yeah.
Most of my siblings left at one point or another. But I stayed in it. And so I think that's what's unique is it's taken me a long time to figure out why. Why did I stay when I hated it so much? And I raised my kids in it.
Yeah.
And I've actually I've apologized to my kids for raising them in that environment. They don't hold any ill will and they think they had a good upbringing.
Yeah.
But I was always on the fringe raising them. They were allowed to cut their hair if they wanted to. My son wore his hair different colors whenever he felt like it, or, lengths.
Yeah.
They were in sports. They wore pants. My daughter wore pants. I wore pants. I always had short hair, but I wore a hairpiece so nobody could tell.
Yeah.
And I wore dresses to meeting.
Yeah.
So,
But people, because of those things that you did, I'm sure you had extra judgment or people saying
yes.
stuff, talking about you or telling you to do stuff differently, maybe.
Yeah, I especially if you aren't in every single meeting that you could be in, and then the judgment starts coming. People start asking, "Are you in? Are you out? We haven't seen you for a while."
Yeah.
And even though I worked shift work, they would say, "But you're home," even though I worked all night.
Yeah.
You could still be in Sunday morning meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably could, but what good would it do?
Yeah, I remember that pressure.
Yeah. And I just started, after my kids were raised, after my older kids were raised, I got divorced. I divorced someone who was well-known and well-liked. And he's still well-known and well-liked. And so then I really became the outcast because I still kept coming because I knew people expected me to quit, and I refused to because they weren't going to win.
Well, you were the rebel all along, so that makes sense.
So I still kept coming. And then I had the audacity to adopt kids while I was single and divorced. And that really, put people over the edge. Some of the things I would hear was, because they were older when they were adopted, they weren't established in the truth, so they're not going to follow it. One of the things a lot of people were saying was, I was only adopting kids so my ex-husband wouldn't want to take me back, which made no sense, except for he didn't want any more kids. So he didn't have any more kids. I adopted him.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. And there would be times when the whole meeting would be invited to something except for me. I wasn't invited. Or all the kids would be invited except for my kids.
Yeah. And did they tell you why? When you found out afterwards, that you weren't invited to something, what would they say? Or did you confront them
No
on
explanation, or they would say, we just don't know what to do with you. We don't know where you would sit.
Yeah.
I wasn't invited to a wedding because I didn't have a +1. And so they didn't know where I would sit. Who would I sit with? Or I could come if I came along with my parents, or I took my parents who are professing.
Yeah.
So I know my sister, she has a different story, but her kids were not invited to things too. People would be handing, I remember one time in particular, it was after a special meeting. So there was a lot of people there. They were handing out invitations to kids to something. Our kids were not invited. And to me, I would never do that to somebody.
No.
I don't care if I wanted them there or not, or I
Yeah.
knew them or not. I would never exclude somebody.
Yeah.
And to me, that is not godly.
Yeah. Did your like, what was the reaction that your kids had to that, or did they just kind of not pay attention?
They were frustrated.
Yeah.
And none of them continued. And
Yeah.
my oldest son especially told me I would never go to this. He was raised in it, and he has a lot of friends still that are going or have gone, and he just said, I can't go to it because of the way you were treated, and because the way we were treated. He was out of the house by that time, but just watching the way I was treated after I was divorced, he's like, I would never have anything to do with it, because that's not godly.
Yeah, their actions are not godly.
No, that has
No.
nothing to do with serving God.
Yeah. Why did you finally decide to, like, it was time to go? Because you basically mentally, like, you were done a long time, and then, but you didn't physically leave.
No, it was weird because I didn't physically leave because I was waiting for my parents. I was waiting for my parents to die so I wouldn't disappoint them. And isn't that so weird? Because I'll just say my age, I'm 62. I'm 63 now.
It is, but, like, we've heard that from a lot of people, though. And I get, you don't want to disappoint your parents, you know, or make them, I don't know, think something else. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, or other people that are around me that I've known all my life. And I also thought, I don't want them to, the people who thought I would leave initially, I don't want them to win.
Yeah.
But then I realized I was being a hypocrite. But what started the whole ball rolling is the Dean Brewer blow up. And it was kind of the catalyst, because I was like, wait a minute. If I don't believe their teachings, and now I see that there's abuse on top of it, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Why am I here? And so I wrote a letter to Daryl, didn't get a response, but it was cathartic for me. And I had a lot of questions in it. Not so much accusations, just questions. Like, where do we go from here? How do I trust? How do I, you know, these are people telling me how to live my life, telling me I can't remarry, which I choose not to. I kind of like being single, but telling me I can't remarry, or if I did remarry, then I can't take part, or, you know, so these are people dictating my life, but yet they are living a life that is horrendous.
Yeah. And they can't answer your questions. Or
No,
they didn't answer your questions.
Wouldn't answer, too busy to answer. And they were legitimate, like, where do we go from here? How do I regain my trust? But it's interesting because, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Raising my kids, one of the things that they say, especially my older kids, all my kids say this, I never trusted the workers. And so I never left them alone with my kids, never let them be in a car with my kids. If they spent the night at my house, which was rare, my kids slept in my room. So I was very protective, and I don't know why that is. I don't know if something occurred that made me that way, or if I'm just a non-trusting person.
Yeah.
But I was very protective of my kids, and they've all said they're thankful that I never allowed them to stay in the dorms at convention unless they had a friend that was staying with them, and they always had to stay with that friend. I started taking campers to conventions so that we would have our own sleeping space, or we'd sleep in a hotel.
Yeah.
I just was really protective, and I don't know why, because I didn't really trust anyway.
I remember when I went to convention, and, like, you were supposed to stay in the dorms, and there was men's and women's. I remember just feeling like it was a weird situation. Like, why are we splitting up families and then everybody's sleep? I don't know. I felt weird about it.
Yeah.
And that'd been way before I knew, anything. But I remember feeling I never slept in a dorm when we went to convention.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we just drove. But I remember feeling like that was weird or icky, or something was off with it, and I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something deep down that's like,
this isn't
red buzzer.
right.
This is wrong.
Yeah,
something is off here.
Yeah, this isn't.
I don't know.
This seems odd. There was always things growing up that I thought were off. Like if somebody came to a meeting that didn't profess and they took part, everybody, like the air went out of the room.
Yeah.
And I would always think, what is wrong with these people? Why this person is trying to be godly and you're like shunning them for
Yeah.
that? I never agreed with a lot of the teachings.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to say that. I go to meeting, but I don't follow a lot of the teachings. And then I finally just decided I'm kind of being a hypocrite because in showing up to meeting, looking like I'm professing,
Yeah.
I'm acting like I'm one of them, and I'm not. And I
Yeah.
haven't been for a long time.
Yeah.
I haven't gone to gospel meetings since 2019 because I was having such bad anxiety attacks in meeting. And then COVID hit, and it was wonderful. I loved listening.
Yeah.
And I actually got more out of it, and I learned how to study on my own. And that was the first time ever. But I haven't gone to Wednesday night meeting for probably 30 years. And then I took a job that worked every other weekend, and it kind of gave me a relief to like sit back and think about what am I doing here. And in the meantime, I just started studying and praying and really working hard on my own salvation. And it was about, I haven't actually gone to a Sunday morning meeting. I have wonderful elders and they are good friends of mine. But I haven't actually gone to a Sunday morning meeting for probably almost a year.
Okay.
And then I finally sent them a letter a couple months ago and said, don't expect me.
Yeah.
I just can't do this anymore. I have to step back.
Did you send that to your elder, or was that the one to the worker, or they were?
No, I just
different?
sent it to my elder.
Oh, okay.
I figured the workers would figure out because my
Yeah.
parents are really good friends
Yeah.
with our worker, and it wasn't long before I wasn't on the email list anymore.
Yeah. Did the elder respond at all? Or
Yes.
just- okay.
Yeah. And I actually have dinner with them, and
Okay.
yeah, we've
That's
been in
good.
touch. It's been good, and they were the one person, the one couple that reached out to me in this whole field after my divorce.
Yeah.
And they actually were there with my adoptions too. They've been the one support that I've had for 30 years.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always thought that was crazy. Like you leave and all your friends are just gone. Everybody that you've known is just gone and they want nothing to do with you. And I think, what kind of relationship were we building then? Because I guess I had the wrong impression or something.
Yeah. When I was listening to your video, I thought, I felt the same way even as a kid growing up. There was a family that we were really close to, and they quit coming, and they supposedly got offended. Who knows what the true story is?
Yeah.
And I really loved their kids and was not allowed to reach out to them. And that just felt wrong to me.
Yeah.
It just didn't. There's so much when I look back that just gave me an icky feeling
Yeah.
that I just would shove inside of me, and finally realized it's a big source of my anxiety and depression.
Yep.
I think one of the biggest things that people can relate to is staying in just because.
Yeah.
And they're afraid to move on. And it has been interesting. It'll take me forever to deconstruct.
Yeah.
What has helped is my kids are very supportive. All of them are. My siblings have been very supportive.
Are all of your siblings out now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was the last one.
Okay.
I was the last holdout.
Okay. Well, you're the rebel. We know.
Yeah. And I've stayed in for not the right reasons, but I was there. Yeah, and they've all been supportive, but they've all had, like my oldest brother asked me, well, why do you still even believe in God? Because he doesn't believe there's a God anymore, which is his prerogative. And some of my kids don't. And so what it caused me to do is really search. Do I actually?
Yeah.
And why do I?
Yeah.
And where is it? And so it's been good for me to, like, they've pushed me to not just bumble along and follow along, which was what I felt like was happening to a lot of people in the truth. So one of the things, while I was going through my divorce and adoption fiasco with the 2x2s, I had prayed over and over that God would fix the truth. That he would weed out the people who weren't really doing his will, or, you know, who were just like going along with it and weren't really. And then a couple weeks ago, I figured out he is, but not in the way I thought. That I almost feel like he's, you know, they call it the Great Scourge. Is that how you say it? Or the Great Purge?
Yeah.
Maybe he's purging people out
Yeah.
instead of in, because some of the people who have left are people I've known all my life, and they have given everything, including their money, to the truth. Everything to the workers. Everything to have, they've built houses that people could stay in, and they've given everything, and now they're out because it's not God's way.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking when you were talking before, like, they didn't answer your questions, so you had to find the answers for yourself. But it was it's good to ask questions and to dig in, because that's how you figure it out. Not somebody telling you, oh, this is what to believe, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can no longer cherry pick verses
Yeah.
to fit your narrative.
Not when you're trying to study. It doesn't work. No.
Yeah. I felt even in our Sunday morning meeting or a Wednesday night meeting, you can cherry pick a verse that fits your narrative.
Yes.
And I think we learn to be really good at it. My mission now is to figure out how to really have fellowship.
Yeah.
Because I don't even know what that means.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard because, like you were saying earlier, you don't know, like, if you go to a church, if this person's telling the truth, or because you've been lied to.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
How do you know? But you don't know until you study and, you know God's word for yourself.
Yeah.
And then you can look at somebody, well, watch their sermon online. Don't go. Just watch your sermon online and be like, that's not right.
Yeah. I was watching one preacher for a while, and then he's well known.
Yeah.
And there are something, you can get tidbits out of it. And then I started just feeling like this is all pomp and circumstance. This is not, he's not doing it out of the goodness of his heart.
Yeah.
It's
a
all
show.
It's all show.
Yeah.
And I think that God shows us that. You were talking about being lied to. I think that when the Dean Brewer thing hit, my rage was just off the charts. And I couldn't figure out why, because I thought I had worked through all of that.
Yeah.
But then the biggest thing was, I've been lied to my whole life. And that's what made me angry.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mind following rules.
Yeah.
I was a rebel according to the 2x2s, but I was very spiritual. And I don't mind following. Rules are good for me. And I like black and white. But to be lied to and tell me that you were living a certain life and you're not, and it's not just him, it's hundreds, if not thousands.
Yeah. Yeah, you're mad you were lied to, and you're mad everybody else is lied to too,
Yeah.
You're not just mad for yourself. You're angry for everybody else that's dealt with it and still dealing with it, and makes sense.
I've gotten to the point where I feel sad. I feel sorry for people who think that they are the only ones saved and everybody else is going to go to hell.
Yeah.
I never felt that way I told you that story when I was in 4th grade. from 4th grade on, God told me that that wasn't true. And so that was an argument a lot with, especially with my parents, but also with workers. And so I've never felt exclusive, but a lot of people do. And I can't imagine how it feels, how frantic it feels to know that everybody's leaving and they're going to hell and you're going to be there by yourself.
Yeah. Well, and they have no system of like reaching out to people that have left, because they don't do that on purpose, which always baffled my mind. Like I always thought, okay, if you leave a church, somebody should just like love bomb you or something.
Exactly.
I don't know, something to that effect. And there's nothing like that, because they basically tell you, oh, you know, that person went their way, they're out in the world now, so you should just ignore them.
They'll influence you to go the same way.
Yes, yeah.
So
you
don't even talk to them, because they're a bad influence now.
Yeah.
But yet they don't sit down and have studies, have like meaningful studies.
Yeah.
With people who are in or out.
Yeah. Well, if they had meaningful studies, that would cause people to question, and then
you're not allowed
the wheels
to
would
question.
turn, and that would not end well for them. So yeah, I mean, it's all, but that's part of that lie cycle, you know, like, well, we have to only feed them this information, and then, you know, and that's it, because otherwise they might start to think other things.
Right. They might start believing
Yeah.
what we're telling them is not the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's a crazy, vicious cycle, I think. But
Looking back now, there's a lot of people that I love that are still going to meeting. And they have their reasons for it. I ask them. They have their reasons. But looking back, I think, what a crazy life.
yeah.
Because even little things, like I was thinking on the way here, little things like I used to not have any money and have to outfit my kids for convention, and not just in play clothes.
Yeah.
They had to be in dress clothes, and I would go in debt, or I would be so poor I couldn't eat for the next 2 or 3 weeks. And nobody cares about that. They just want you to look a certain way and actually be there.
Yeah.
And stuff like that is just crazy.
Yeah. I remember, I can't remember if I told this or not, but like when we would have workers over to our house for a meal, I would go all like best meal, you know, steak as good as we could. And we were so dirt poor, and like we were eating beans and mashed potatoes, but when the workers came over, I had to have the nicest spread, and I still felt bad about what I was offering them. Like it wasn't good enough for them. And looking back, it's like, man, I can't believe I ever even felt that way. But at the time, I felt like so much pressure to, you know, do a certain thing, look a certain way, have that certain appearance of whatever for that group in particular, even though it made us suffer, you know.
Yeah. It just seems not loving to me, I guess, to expect, like, your hair could never be poofed high enough, or or curled enough, or your dress wasn't, you know, it just, like, you could never meet the expectations.
Yeah.
Your testimony wasn't profound enough, or you didn't say your testimony at convention, or, you know, just, I'm sure other religions have expectations too. But it just, now when I look back, it's just crazy. No wonder a lot of us have anxiety and depression.
Yeah. Well, and when they're basing those, you know, expectations, like that's your salvation is based on those things. That's when it's wrong. Like that's when it's way over and above stressful, because like, okay, well, like I think I put this in my interview, but I had my ears pierced when I was young. Wasn't anything I could do about it. I didn't wear earrings when I went to meeting. My ears went closed, the whole thing, but the mark is still there. I was always judged for the mark still there. I could do nothing about that whatsoever, but it still felt like, oh gosh, I'm never going to measure up because I had holes in my ears. But like,
It was
you know,
the same with my girls that were adopted.
Yeah.
I had to take the earrings out immediately. And they didn't want to.
Yeah.
And they were 10.
Yeah.
And I allowed them to keep them in as long as they wanted. One of them ended up having a medical issue and had to have them out. But it's not fair to them.
No.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense either. Like,
Yeah.
not really.
Yeah. No. There's no reason to not have, that's the other thing that has bothered me for years is the rules have changed
Yeah.
over the years. Like every time you had a worker come in, the rule would be different. Like you could have Christmas, you can't have Christmas, you can have Halloween, you can't have Halloween.
And it's different in a different state or a different area or just a different meeting. Or
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's what, even with the divorce issue, and some workers, like I was told by a worker that I would never go to heaven if I didn't reconcile with my husband, my ex-husband. Well, it's kind of hard to do when he's married, or he doesn't want to, or even if I don't want to.
Yeah.
There's nothing that says that.
Yeah.
So the rules for divorce and remarriage are different. That was one of the questions I asked was, if this is God's way, why isn't it the same worldwide? Why isn't it, you see other churches that have, their statement is the same. And they're just like, well, people are different. And it was the same in the New Testament. And
Yes, except when you're basing your salvation off of it, like,
Yeah.
is it this way or is it this way? Because it's really important to know.
yeah, because some people say you can't go to heaven if you're divorced. Some people are saying you can go to heaven if you're divorced and remarried. Well,
Yeah.
but it's the same with, if you're married to a divorced person. My sister-in-law, my brother didn't profess, my sister-in-law did. She was told to divorce him because he wasn't professing. And she had little babies.
Yeah.
It's like, who? That makes no sense.
Yeah. Well, it was the same with me and David. They said that we were unequally yoked
Yeah.
and that it was okay for him to leave me because we weren't on the same level anyway, even though we had a little baby at the time.
Yeah.
Like,
That's not God.
no.
I had people tell me that I wouldn't have a relationship with my kids because they weren't professing. That you could only have a relationship with them if they went to meeting.
Wow.
I don't understand that because that's not a parent's heart.
No. But then, like, if it was workers, they don't really know. They don't know what it's like to be a parent, most of them.
Yeah.
So
It's true.
they can't really advise you in marriage and parenting and
Yeah.
all that because they've never been there.
No. That was another thing that didn't follow the rules. I never went to a worker about any advice.
Yeah.
Because I figured, what do they know about my life?
I think ours was all unsolicited advice.
Yeah, I did get unsolicited advice. And we
Yes.
did talk about, like, my wedding, that it was just a disaster because it was worker driven.
Yeah.
And it was horrendous. Nobody should have a wedding like that. But it was, I did get unsolicited advice, but I made a conscious choice never to let them know what was going on in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. That probably helped save your sanity somewhat, I would assume.
It seems like it.
Yeah.
I didn't think, my reasoning was they have no right to know what's going on. God
Yeah.
knows what's going on in my life,
Yeah.
and they have no right to know.
Completely true. I
And-
mean, they don't need to know every aspect
Yeah.
of everything.
Yeah.
It's just
I know
not their
other people
business.
feel differently, but
Well, unless you wanted to share, then
Yeah.
that'd be okay. But yeah, making you share something you didn't want to wouldn't be right. So, knowing that there's a lot of people out there that are in the same position that you were just in, like mentally have left but physically haven't, what advice would you give them? Like, if you were talking to them, what would you say?
I think that you can't have peace. I couldn't. I'll speak for myself. I couldn't have peace in meeting, knowing that my heart really wasn't there. And it is hard leaving. It's hard.
Yeah.
You get a lot of judgment. We're used to judgment, but you get a lot of judgment. And there were still moments when I would think, am I going to go to hell? No, am I?
Well, that's been
am I-
ingrained in you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I doing the right thing? Am I headed down the wrong path? And you know that that's what they think. So it's lonely, but find a group, not necessarily that thinks the same as you do. I have my circle, and some of them still go to meeting, and they advise me, and you need support to do it. But my anxiety and depression is gone.
Yeah.
Because I'm no longer trying to live something that I feel like is wrong.
Yeah.
And I didn't just feel like it didn't fit well.
Yeah.
I felt like it was not godly.
Yeah. Well, when we were talking before, I think we're both in the same way that, like, we don't do fake. I don't do fake.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to do fake. And so when you're in that scenario, you're just living a lie. You feel like you're living a lie, and you can't live that way because your mentality is, I don't do fakeness. So why am I making myself do fake, live fake?
Yeah, and I found myself too becoming more judgmental toward the people who are going to meeting while I was going, because I was like, well, I know that what they did last Saturday.
Yeah.
Or I know that they do this or they do that. And so I became more judgmental, and that I've dropped that too, because if you're not trying to hold yourself to that same standard.
Yeah, it's
then
just not healthy
No.
all the way around.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Going back to your question, I think the advice is you just have to rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
Because I slow quit for a long time. That's my term I use. I slow quit for probably 15 years.
Yeah.
And then since the Brewergate, I've picked up the pace just a little bit more. And then I finally was in such turmoil. Like, am I going? Am I not going? If I go, am I going to hear this? Am I going to be angry when I leave? Like, I decided to listen in on special meetings. They were in last October. I was so angry after one speaker that I just threw the phone and I went out and cleaned my garage.
Yeah.
I angry cleaned my garage.
Well,
and I thought, this isn't healthy.
No.
And I started feeling that way in meeting, and I know there's other people, they're worried about their family that they're going to leave behind or that aren't going to speak to them anymore. They'll get over it. If they truly are your family, they'll get over it. They may not treat you the same, but
and if they don't, there's other people out there that will be your friends and your family.
and
they're
you
just
can
your
have
chosen family.
Yeah, you can have a support group.
Yep.
I have chosen not to, like, go to another church or do anything on a regular basis. I'm kind of leaving it organic and trying to decide, and that's worked for me. I know some people have immediately started going to another church because they feel like they need to belong. I never belonged.
Yeah.
So that's not my support group. And I know some people that stay in because that is their only support. But I never had support. I never belonged. So I think it was a little easier for me.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard, but you just have to rip the Band-Aid off. And then I loud quit.
Yeah.
I went and got my hair cut, my ears pierced, all in the same day.
Yeah.
And when somebody who professes asked me about it, I'm like, I loud quit.
Yeah.
And they're like, yep, you sure did.
You're like, I was
and they
ready.
still love me the same.
Yeah.
So I just feel like, honestly, I feel like people feel better knowing where I stand instead of constantly going back and forth like, is she, isn't she, is she in, is she out? I honestly think that they have an easier time with it because they're like, okay, we know exactly where she stands. We might not agree with it, but if they truly love you, then they'll stick around.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like they know what to do with you now.
Yeah, exactly. Before they didn't know what to do. They're like, are you coming? Are you not coming? We sure missed you.
Yeah. Well, and that, like you said, that takes the pressure off you too. You don't have to listen to those phone calls. Like, are you going to come? Are you going to show up today? You know, that kind of stuff, which I'm sure every time was anxiety inducing. Like, should I go? I don't know.
For a while, my son and I had a conversation, and he's like, Mom, do what feels right at the time. Do what, if you feel like going, then go. If you
Yeah.
don't feel like going. And that worked for a while, but
Yeah.
pretty soon I was like,
Ultimately, you just knew what had
Yeah,
to happen,
yeah.
and it was, time to just
a
do
couple
it.
times I left a meeting and I was just so frustrated and angry because of the exclusivity or the message that I heard that I just like, I can't do this to myself anymore.
Yeah.
And I still worry. I worry about my grandkids. I worry, because they don't want to go to another church. And,
Yeah.
am I responsible for their salvation? The whole bit.
Yeah.
So I just study a lot on my own.
Yeah, I think it takes time. Like if I hadn't have had a church to fall back on, I don't even know. Like it would have taken so much time for me just to trust somebody again, to
Yeah.
be able to walk into a church like that. That's super brave to be able to walk into a church and sit there and meet new people and a whole new everything. I mean, the people that can do that, it's crazy brave. But
Yeah. I know
it
there's
just
groups.
takes time.
There's groups of exes, ex 2x2ers that go around together
Yeah.
to like.
I've heard about
see-
that.
Yeah. So that would be interesting to do.
Yeah.
My goal for right now is just to figure out what fellowship even is, because I don't think we ever had fellowship.
Yeah.
That's my feeling, or maybe it's because of the situation I was in.
Yeah.
I never knew what true fellowship was.
Yeah.
And so that's been my goal this year, is to like, the reason why I met with you guys
Yeah.
was what is true fellowship?
Yeah.
What's it like to meet people that you don't even know, but you have something in common? And not just,
Not
I
just
wear
on
a
a
dress.
superficial level.
Yeah.
Yes. Not that I have a bun and a dress. Yeah.
Yes.
Anything else that you
I don't
wanna
think
bring
so.
up? Think we're good?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll let David finish his thing.
He can
Whatever.
edit.
He can edit.
Thank you.
He has so much to edit.